The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Thursday, June 8th, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. According to the Associated Press and NBC News, Donald Trump is going to face another indictment sometime today. According to NBC News, a federal grand jury in Florida is meeting in special counsel Jack Smith's investigation of former President Donald Trump's handling of classified documents, according to sources familiar with the investigation. Trump's lawyers were told in a meeting with Smith that the former president is a target of the investigation, according to two sources briefed on the meeting, and the Florida grand jury is separate from a panel that was convened in Washington, D.C. It has also heard testimony from witnesses, but appeared to take a hiatus over the last few weeks. And apparently today is the day. This afternoon, he's going to face yet another indictment. Previous months, Donald Trump faced an indictment in New York underneath the direction of Alvin Bragg, Attorney General Alvin Bragg, who brought charges against Donald Trump there. He's also facing a potential indictment in the state of Georgia, Fulton County. He is facing potential charges there. And here's the conundrum. And I have an audio clip of an ad that Donald Trump put out ahead of what's going to happen today. But here's the conundrum. The time that we live in, there are enough people who support Donald Trump, who are already mobilized to the point of violence, that believe any narrative that is given to them because they want and need to believe the following: that Donald Trump is somehow the most persecuted president in the history of the United States of America, when in fact Donald Trump is just one of the most criminal presidents that we've had. And that's saying a lot when you consider the batch of criminal presidents that we've had prior to Donald Trump. Donald Trump managed to exceed them all to the point where this empire, as reluctant as it is to hold a former president accountable for anything, this empire is being forced to hold this rich, conservative, white man accountable. And that has put into the hands of a bunch of white aggrieved, and I mean that the people who suffer from the white grievance complex. Conservatives who honestly believe that white people are the ones who are under attack in this country. Those people believe in their heart that this is genuinely a witch hunt and that Donald Trump is the most persecuted president in the history of the United States of America, and they're mobilized to action already. And it's just a question of whether or not they're willing to get back into action for Donald Trump the way they did on January 6th. Or will they say, never mind, we have Ron DeSantis. I mean, really, that's what it's about. I mean, they are loyal to Donald Trump, but they are also committed to power. And if that power is transitioning over to Ron DeSantis, then there's a potential for Donald Trump to be left out to dry even by conservatives. Nevertheless, listen to this ad and listen to the specific names and the language that Donald Trump is using ahead of his indictment later today.
Here's a question for you. Just how far are the radical left and inside the Beltway bandits willing to go to stop him? We all know they hate him for winning the fight to protect life, for exposing their deep state, for draining their precious swamp. And they already know he'll crush Biden. So like a pack of rabid wolves, they attack. So let's impeach him. Let's get tainted radical left prosecutors to charge him. Let's conspire with Hillary and the FBI with fake stories about him. All to distract from Biden's incompetence, weakness, and money-grabbing corruption. But here's the thing, he'll never blink. That's called having the courage of your convictions. And it's why he's our president.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
You know, I'm going to get into making campaign ads like that for presidential campaigns. I mean, it was so predictable when you really consider the lay of the land. Now, don't get me wrong. If you really contextualize what he's saying in this video, along with the imagery of the ravenous wolf being overlaid on top of Hillary Clinton, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jack Smith, Special Counsel Jack Smith, New York Attorney General Alvin Bragg, you really do understand that he's evoking a lot of hatred and anger in the hearts of people who already love him so much. And so you take them down this emotional roller coaster where you just are really breaking the heart of all of these conservatives who really believe in Donald Trump and really genuinely believe that he is the most persecuted president in the history of the United States of America. And that opening salvo of that ad, the first 30 seconds of that ad, is just nothing but really intense music where you're pulling on their heartstrings and you're really just evoking the emotion of despair and anger. And then you resolve the music into something hopeful, idealistic, and uplifting. And you give them inspiration. And Donald J. Trump, he's our president.
Our president.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
I'm absolutely going to get into ad making. The effectiveness of that ad, that remains to be seen, but the structure of the propaganda and the technique is most certainly playing on every note necessary to rile up his base into the frenzy necessary to create the chaos. That's the only recourse for Donald Trump at this point. Nobody can help him. None of his friends can help him. Secret Service can't keep him from this indictment. None of the conservative media machine can help him. But he can stir up enough chaos. And if he can stir up enough chaos, well, then that's exactly the distraction that he needs to do something. Will it actually help him in the end? That remains to be seen, because we do live at a very peculiar point in time where conservatives have shown that they are willing to break into the Capitol and to shut the entire Capitol down for their erroneously aggrieved, their fraudulently aggrieved ideologies and beliefs. Like, they really tried to overthrow this empire because they believe that they're the most persecuted people in the world. And so, of course, if Donald Trump can play on that same exact note, then he's hoping he can get them to do it again. Enough to give them time to get away, to get out of the country maybe. Because it looks like this time they might actually have him dead to rights. But again, when has this country ever really held a single former president responsible for their crimes? Perhaps we're living in that reality now. So, New York City, if you saw any news yesterday, you saw, or if you live in the city for that matter, you clearly saw and experienced what was one of the worst days for air pollution ever in the city. I mean, the city was off the charts, literally. The air quality index was so poor that it literally was off the scale of what is tracked around the world. And this came as a result of the wildfire smoke that it came blowing in from Canada. And that wildfire, of course, is connected to the ongoing climate crisis that is, of course, exacerbated by corporations. And the end result yesterday was a sepia haze that fell over the entire city. In fact, it went all the way down into New Jersey. And it really just was a very stark reminder of how critical of a time that we are in right now at this present moment. The inflection point that we live in right now in human history. If nothing else, yesterday should have been a wake-up call for anyone who has just kind of pushed climate change and climate disaster to the back of your thinking, because you know how we do as human beings. We will compartmentalize that which is troubling. And the lingering thought of climate disaster has been pushed back into most of our minds so that we don't have to really think about the fact that we are in that generation, that inflection point where if we do not correct what we're doing, then our children, our literal next generation, our seed, however you want to categorize your progeny, not the futuristic, but the kids that are in your house right now, are faced with decisions and a lifestyle that is disastrous. That's the inflection point that we live in right now. And we don't tend to think about that because, well, it's hard to get up and be motivated when you know the society around you continues to run headlong into complete and total climate disaster. But I've gotten better at processing that kind of doomerism. And sadly to say, it's not doomerism in the purest sense. It's not like, it's not fear mongering. It's actually happening. And I feel like yesterday was as close to a wake up call as anyone can get when you see how quickly the environment around you can change into something that's uninhabitable. So we push it back into the recesses of our thinking. We deprioritize it because we also have a sense and a feeling of helplessness, because what can we do, as individuals? Well, it's very difficult for us as individuals to push back against what's happening. But if there's ever a time when we don't think about this through the lens of our individual efforts, but we organize into the largest groups that we possibly can organize in to combat what is going on around this planet, caused and exacerbated by corporations, the greed that pushes us to continuously consume these fossil fuels and to continue down a path of sheer destruction, the absurdity of it all. I mean, I can't even finish the sentence because we live in such an absurd time. And I guess the reason I can handle it better now is because we live in a doubly disturbing time. We've had to deal with the same type of chaos and ignorance and irresponsibility that we see from society as a result of COVID-19, right? And it's like, once you figured out how to survive COVID-19, you have to take a step back and realize, oh, there's another crisis that's been lingering this entire time, and it's climate disaster. And guess what? The same people who did the most irresponsible things they could around COVID-19, they're still in charge of society, continuing the policies that are so irresponsible, that are going to lead us to complete and total climate disaster if we don't wrestle control over the system and do what needs to be done to, my God, make sure we have a habitable planet for our children. Like, what else is there for us to talk about?
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. Very special welcome to our newest patron, Frida Anderson. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. And very special thank you for all of the birthday love that's still coming in. Ryan Foreman, thank you so much for that birthday gift. Andy A, thank you so much for that birthday gift. Kevin, thank you for that birthday gift. Wait a minute. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions, and you get access to our bi-weekly patron party, or you get your personalized shout out by sending some love. Go buy me a coffee, Cash App, $BPD 2018, and we'll see all of you after this break. Hey, I've got the best supporters, man. For real.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome back. Welcome back. Tonight, Tonight, I will be joining the Leftist Mafia and their live broadcast on YouTube. I think they stream at a lot of different locations, just, anywhere they stream at. Leftist Mafia with Olemi, Lauren. I can't really massacre that last name. So there's Ole. There is, of course, Lance from the Surfs. There is David Dole. There's Mike Figueroa. And there's a couple of other people. And I'm sorry I started to list names because I hate when I list names and I can't remember everybody's name, but I love the show and I love what they stand for, the leftist unity that they represent. And so I'm going to hang out with them tonight. I'm pretty sure we'll probably talk a little bit about Cornel West's campaign launch and the fact that, me being I'm a fanboy of Cornel West. Okay, let's just cut to the chase here. But despite being like a huge fan and student of Cornel West, I can't support him particularly because of the political party that he's affiliated with. We discussed that at great length, and I'm sure that'll come up tonight. So be sure to tune in. They always have a great time over there, and I think this is my first time joining them. So see you tonight on the Leftist Mafia broadcast. Also, in housekeeping, there won't be any additional 30-minute bonus for the patrons today. We'll be back to that sometime tomorrow. But today, in preparation for tonight's broadcast, as well as a particular journey that I have been working on for some time, I am excited because it feels like today is the day for me to complete that. And I have been working on this project for a very long time. I've got to jump headlong in as soon as we're done recording this first 30 minutes. So no 30-minute bonus show today. That said, let me stop with the church announcements and get on with the rest of the episode. I found myself going down a rabbit hole early this morning. I'm normally up at 4 o'clock, maybe 3:30 sometimes. But this morning around 6, when I started prepping for the show, I inadvertently went down a rabbit hole of a thread by someone named Sam Holdley Brill. I just started following them this morning. They're on Twitter at DEONTELEOLOGIST. You're probably going to be easiest to just go to my timeline and pick up the thread where he did a magnificent breakdown of the idea of cultural Marxism as it has been promulgated by the right. And if you don't know what cultural Marxism is, I kind of would recommend just doing a general Google search and maybe go to Wikipedia to get a good understanding. But as you read into the background that this thread unravels, you will see that conservatives have been working on the war that we are in right now for a very long time. Their language has been very consistent and very specific for a very long time. And what we're experiencing now as the war on woke is merely a final conclusion to the war on cultural Marxism. And this thread from Brother Sam Holdley Brill, a PhD student at the Columbia University in New York, is absolutely brilliant. So I want to share some of what he wrote, as well as some of the audio from the clips that he shared, which I think is going to it's going to be kind of revealing. So shout out to him. Definitely go give him a follow. This is what he said in the opening salvo. Quote, cultural Marxism has entered mainstream political discourse, appearing in recent speeches by DeSantis and Hawley, Fox News broadcasts, and right-wing media from Breitbart to Ben Shapiro. This thread with clips on the 25-year history of quote-unquote cultural Marxism on the right. And listen to this clip of Bill Lind. And again, this is provided to us by Sam Holdley Brill. But listen to this clip of Bill Lind as he identifies the source and the sickness of the disease called political correctness.
Where does it come from? What is it? We call it political correctness. The name originated as something of a joke, literally in a comic strip, and we tend to still think of it somehow as only half serious. In fact, it's deadly serious. It is the great disease of our century, the disease that has left tens of millions of people dead in Europe, in Russia, in China. indeed around the world. It is the disease of ideology. PC is not funny. PC is deadly serious. And if we look at it analytically, and if we look at it historically, we quickly find out exactly what it is. Political correctness is cultural Marxism. It is Marxism translated from economic into cultural terms in an effort that goes back not to the 1960s and the hippies and the peace movement, but back to World War I.
Now, what he's referencing there is the Frankfurt School and the founding of the Frankfurt Schools, particularly at Columbia University, as the founders of the school fled Nazi Germany. That's what he's referring to. And for people like Bill Lind, now, for a little more context, this clip is from like the 90s. Okay. So this lets you know exactly how long they have had this language so precise that Bill Lind is not an intellectual. He's just a radio host. And not to slam on my quasi profession, but you know, there's a difference between being a political commentator and being an intellectual. Yet he has in his language, in his skill set, a very precise indictment of the precise school of thought that is indeed a threat to white male Christian hegemony. I mean, the conservatives have known the truth about who and what they represent and stand for a long time. Listen to how precise he says it here.
If we compare the basic tenets of political correctness with classical Marxism, the parallels are very obvious. First of all, both are totalitarian ideologies. The totalitarian nature of political correctness is revealed nowhere more clearly than on college campuses, many of which have at this point become small, ivy-covered North Koreas, where the student or faculty member who dares to cross any of the lines set up by the gender feminists and the homosexual rights activists or the local black group or Hispanic group or any of the other sainted victims groups that PC revolves around, quickly finds themselves in judicial trouble. They face, within the small legal system of the college, they face formal charges, they face some kind of star chamber proceeding, and they face punishment.
Did you hear the precision with which he identified the very groups who are currently on the target list of the war on woke, the so-called war on woke? Feminists, the LGBTQIA community, black people, and Hispanic people. The very people who are the targets today, some 30 years later since he had this conversation. And again, or this lecture. And again, Bill Lind is not an intellectual on the cutting edge of intellectual thought, ideological thought, philosophical thought. He's a radio host. So this lets us know that these are talking points that have saturated and been so enmeshed in the conservative way of thinking for a very long time. Why do I point that out so emphatically? Because we need to know that the thing that we're fighting against today isn't new. It is not a new revelation. It is a well thought out and precise campaign that they have been executing with precision for a very long time. Listen to this clip from 1999. It was also in that thread I retweeted from the gentleman on Twitter from Columbia University. Listen to this clip. It's from 1999, Washington Journal. It's a conservative calling in on the conservative phone line. And I want you to listen to how the language is as precise then as it is now. And I really want you to contextualize your thoughts for the reality that this is a very precise ideology with a strategy that has been passed down from generation to generation. And we are on the receiving end of a very highly coordinated and scripted campaign.
Winooski, Vermont on the conservative line. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. What I hear being discussed, and it seems to me people don't even realize it, is this whole idea of cultural Marxism. I think that's what's permeated our society, where now there's this effort as if equality is a wonderful goal to be achieved, when, as I see it, equality does not even exist in nature. It's not part of the natural law that everything and everybody is equal. And to try to enforce it by government power is a culturally Marxist idea. And when a person says, look at how all the CEOs, or the huge percentage of them, are white, well, to me, all that shows me is 500 years ago, the Europeans were so advanced technologically and scientifically that they could build the boats that brought them to this continent, where the Indians had not even yet developed the concept of the wheel. There are differences in the races, and all affirmative action is just a cultural Marxist idea to try to enforce something that does not exist in nature, that is equality, onto the people, and it's going to trigger a race war. And I wonder, how many legions do you have that you think you can enforce something that doesn't exist?
Now, there's a second part to this, but I just want you to pause and listen to the confidence with which this person speaks about a race war, with the hubris that says, I wish you would, because you don't have enough people to win. That's how this random conservative woman called in 1999 to discuss cultural Marxism and to outline the exact philosophy of white replacement theory, along with this white grievance complex, along with glorifying Western civilization and Western chauvinism, right? This is the exact precise language of your random conservative YouTuber today. Okay, your random conservative, whether or not they're Tim Pool or Joe Schmo, who has a podcast with 10 listeners. This is the precise language that is being used in the war against us today. They are waging their own culture war while accusing us of being cultural Marxists who are waging a culture war on Western civilization. Well, the truth is we are. We are waging a war on Western civilization, because if the best Western civilization can do is Elon Musk, climate change, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, if the best that Western civilization can do is the majority of humanity living either in poverty or living hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, if the best Western civilization, if the epoch, if the apex rather of Western civilization is this financial capitalism that we have, this what Wall Street is doing right now, you mean to tell me that the very best humanity can do is what Western civilization has offered up? No, I'm sorry, Karen. No, it needs to be challenged. Western chauvinism must absolutely be challenged. And not just challenged, but brought down to nothing, because honestly, it is bringing humanity down to nothing. The absurdity of the times in which we live, the denial of science. In order for Western chauvinism to reign, right? They call it Western civilization, but that's just a nice way of whitewashing what it really is, which is white male Christian patriarchal hegemony. That's what it is. And for it to reign and continue to remain in power, it requires the rejection of science. It requires the rejection of truth. It requires the rejection of reason, of the ability to coexist, of tolerance. It requires a rejection of everything that provides stability for humanity. It requires us to continue going down this race to the bottom that we're seeing in climate change. The greed that is at the core of Western chauvinism is the reason we couldn't shut anything down for COVID-19, and the reason you couldn't stay home and work from home, even though you get better work done at home, right? It's the reason we have the absurdity of our time. So yes, absolutely, we are challenging Western civilization, particularly Western chauvinism, because we know exactly who and what this order really is, and we see what it's doing to humanity. And it has people like this woman, this caller. Listen to part 2. This is the thinking and the mindsets of people and the mindset of individuals who want to control society and dominate over everyone else. Listen to this evil.
What do you think is the difference between, say, the black and the white race?
What do I think is the difference?
Yeah. You say there are differences. What are the differences that you see?
Well, of course, the creativity, the intellectual creativity. Where do all the inventions come from? They come from Europe and the United States of America, from people who are of European descent. Just check it out. You know yourself. The vast majority of all inventions were done by European people. And you know what? As I see it, the black people that are here in the United States, that's like winning the lottery. You won the jackpot because you're in the country where the blacks have the most chance to advance compared to any other country in the entire world.
That's the mindset. That is the philosophy. That is the thinking. That is the spirit of Western chauvinism being promoted by a woman who herself is the victim of Western chauvinism, but she is also the beneficiary of it. So she decides to play her role in this patriarchal system. And we're seeing that today with this entire trad wife, TRAD wife, right? It is this movement from conservative women who present themselves not as someone to be reckoned with in corporate America, not someone to be reckoned with in terms of equality, but someone who is going to be submissive to a strong white man. There is an entire movement of that happening right now. Like, they're marketing it. It's a category on OnlyFans, if I'm not mistaken. That type of thinking comes as a result of people who decide to be complicit with the power structure that is dominating them as well. But as we discussed yesterday, whenever you have an individual who themselves are marginalized, when you give them an opportunity to marginalize someone else, well, that's when you really see the character of an individual or a group of people. And it really says something when you see a group of people like white women who themselves have suffered under this patriarchal order be complicit, co-conspirators with this white supremacist order, because, well, they're beneficiaries thereof at sundry times themselves. See you tomorrow.